Have you ever found yourself at the table with your players and you're in a combat encounter and you look around and realize, man, we've been playing this game for who knows how long, how many years, how many months, and yet there's still hiccups during combat. People still don't know what they want to do during their turn. They still don't have their actions laid out. They still don't know what their abilities are. More importantly, maybe they don't even know if it's their turn because they don't know what the initiative is. Whatever it is, there's many different times during combat when I personally have been like, man, I feel like I should be better at this. I feel like we should be a little bit smoother. And that's kind of what my topic today is about. It's about expectations, specifically 4 combat expectations that work whether you're in high or low level combat encounters. But first, welcome to How to Be a Better DM. My name's Tanner Wayland, and this is the show for DMs, both new and old, who really just want to wrangle their players. No, I'm just kidding. You really just want to have fun with your players, but sometimes they need some guidance. And that's what we're talking about today. How to guide your players to have a little bit more of a productive time. And I'm not saying productive like, oh, kill the fun. No, I'm saying productive in the way that no one's really having fun when one of your players or multiple of your players back to back are like, okay, it's my turn. Is it my turn? Oh, it's my turn. Okay, well, man, what do I want to do? Like, that's not fun for anybody. But there are some things that you can set up, and some of them take a little bit of work and, sticking to it until everybody gets the idea. But once they do, then things go a lot more smoothly, and you and them get to focus on what's actually fun for you, which is being creative, doing cool stuff, and, messing with the enemy. But, let's just jump into this. And just to give a little background, I kind of thought about this. Hopefully this isn't too boring, but I thought about this because at my job currently, we've kind of had a lot of changes. I do marketing for an insurance company, but we've had a lot of changes and a lot of growth recently, and we've had kind of a higher up work with our marketing team more and kind of really work on getting these processes down. And to be honest, it's a little boring sometimes, It's like when we have these meetings and the meetings are supposed to have a specific flow that keeps them quick, but then you have to explain it more and more. And there are times when I'm like, man, this is taking a while. We're spending a lot of time explaining the process rather than discussing what we were supposed to. But as it's gone on, and as we've gotten past those initial stutters in the process, things have gone a lot more smooth, and it's actually helped the meetings be a lot more productive than they were in the past. And it's been a better experience overall, even though you had that awkward implementation time. Okay, sorry, that was a lot of maybe boring stuff for most of the people out there, but hopefully it gets across the point that, setting combat expectations and setting up these rules it can feel unfun initially, but then the payoff is quite fun because you're not getting hung up. Like I said at the start, you're not looking around the table being like, man, what's keep holding things up? Because you've already put things in place and reinforced them so that things go smoothly. Anyway, enough belaboring the point. Number 1, the first expectation that you can set is to have your actions ready. That means knowing your abilities. It also means understanding what I want to do next regardless of what happens. Now, when I say regardless of what happens, I'm thinking about how so many players, myself included, we don't plan ahead what we want to do because we're like, oh, the enemy could end up moving, or they could end up putting another player in jeopardy and I have to respond to that. Someone could get hurt and maybe I'll need to go heal them or get in the way or distract or something like that, right? You kind of delay deciding because you're not sure how the enemy will act. And I'm a big proponent for make the decision and stick with the decision and then let the dice fall where they may, pun intended and not intended. It reminds me, there's actually this board game that my parents got our family kind of like as a group Christmas present for Christmas one year called Colt Express. If you haven't heard of it, which I wouldn't be surprised if you hadn't, I hadn't heard about it before I saw it, and I'm fairly into board games. But it was an interesting idea. Basically, they like built out this train car, and you're bandits, and you're on the car, and you kind of lay down these card actions in a row. Like you go around the circle based on whose turn it is, and you just lay down cards just for what you want to do. And then you do that for like three different rounds, essentially, but nothing has happened. You just essentially are laying down a deck of cards that will one by one go off and kind of things fall where they may. So if someone else did something that you weren't expecting, and you were like, "Oh, my next move is moving up onto the top of the train," but then someone else that you were going to then attack on the top of the train had moved down, you're kind of locked into that situation. You have to go through with what you did. Now you can't do that with D&D. It's great that you can change on the fly, but I think the expectation that like, hey, don't overthink it. Come up with it beforehand and then maybe adapt on the fly slightly, but try and stay true to what you had planned. I think this is great for players. It's also great for you as a DM because it's so easy to get caught up in your players and their momentum. But if you have a monster with interesting abilities and you had a cool idea for it, do it. Come up with a plan, adjust on the fly, but don't like change what you're going to do. Just do it. And that's where I think also a timer becomes a non-negotiable. Because as much as I say this, and as much as you may say it aloud session after session, if you don't have a timer, then it just has no teeth, right? You have to have a timer, whether it's probably a minute. It feels fair, honestly, where you're like, okay, minute starts now. And then they can do whatever they want in that minute, but they have to do something. Otherwise, they just do a basic attack. And initially, they'll be a little bit peeved that like, oh my goodness, I'm so rushed. But then if you keep reminding them and be like, hey, you're on deck, make sure you have an action ready, then they're for sure going to get used to it. And for you, I think as a DM, it's very easy for you also to kind of, in the midst of juggling everything, be like, oh man, what do I want to do? And then you end up taking a while. And to be fair, you are dealing with a lot more than the players. They could learn from you. But truthfully, just come up with an action beforehand. Maybe even while you're planning the combat, be like, okay, my monster is going to have 3 kind of objective things that it's going to do using its different abilities. And I'm going to do those in this order or in various orders, but either way, I know what I'm going to do. That'll kind of make this a fun combat. And then stick with it. Now, regarding high and low level combat with this specific thing of having your actions ready, I think it's easy to ignore when players are low leveled. They don't have many abilities to begin with, and so it might feel like it's quick to begin with, or maybe certain players are taking a while because they're trying to be more creative or trying to get the most bang for their buck with the low level abilities that they have. But you know what? Set the expectation early, because then later when they are high leveled characters, they're going to have a harder time, right? It's not going to get easier. It's only going to get harder. But with them being high leveled, it's just so important to also be like, hey, don't think about what you're doing during your turn. You have too many abilities. Come up with something you want to do. Maybe have a fallback, but like either way, have one idea of what it is and commit to it. Just even tell them that. Be like, hey, I want you to commit, especially when you're high leveled. Commit to an action and carry it through so that you can just have it ready. Or, if you want to be creative and all that stuff, sure. Just don't wait until it's your turn to do so. Now, number 2 expectation, or the second expectation, probably more normal way to say that. The second combat expectation to give your players is to stay on top of their dice game, especially when it comes to speed. That's so important. Because if you're like, oh, you have to tell me what you want to do within a minute, cool. But hopefully they would also be done rolling within that minute, or within, another minute on top of that. I think that rolling dice can be such a quiet and unnoticed time sink, because it's like, oh, I have so many different abilities, and this one, I'm rolling 3d4, and this one, it's 1d12 plus whatever. So don't overthink it. Get your dice game figured out. Like, don't act like you can forever just slowly pick up different dice and roll them. It slows things down. So what you can do is give players suggestions. You can make sure they have enough dice. Maybe you bring them, maybe they bring them, but either way, they have enough dice that they can have each ability's worth of dice already partitioned beforehand, so they can just grab it and roll, right? Or they could do a digital roller if they aren't all that crazy about the actual physical mechanic of rolling the dice. Digital rollers, honestly, for me, work pretty well, because I'm always like, oh, I don't want to slow things down. And as much as I love rolling the dice, I also just like seeing the numbers in general. Now, sometimes if it's an exceptionally big ability with a lot of dice, once again, a digital dice roller is great. Or gasp, roll ahead, and just be honest. I think that sometimes for certain abilities, especially you as a DM, and for certain players, smart to think, oh, I have this one big roll. I know it's going to be a doozy, or I know in this turn, I'm basically going to, between the bonus action and the action and everything else, I'm going to be kind of going crazy with dice. Roll them ahead. Maybe do the roll to hit in the moment, but, have the damage rolled ahead. That could save you a lot of time. Now, if you're low leveled with this specific expectation, it's easy to think that, hey, I'm doing a little bit of damage, so it's okay if I take my time, roll slowly, I'll slowly pick up the dice. No. Get them used to rolling quickly, even at low level, so that it's easier for them as they get higher level and have to roll more die. Now, if they're high level, they're crippled if they don't know how to roll so many dice. So make sure that there's ways to do it. Make sure that it's like, hey, I know you like to roll dice, but we're high level. So you need to have this stuff figured out. You need to have the dice partitioned, or digital roller, or roll ahead. Either way, whereas with low level, you should set the expectation. With a high leveled combat, that expectation becomes a need. So don't slough on that. Now, the third combat expectation is to make initiatives obvious. This is pretty quick. I think an initiative tracker works really well, or a list that you write and it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have it in an obvious, visible place. You could even write it on the board if you're using a big old whiteboard or piece of paper for your map. Just write it up in the corner or something, right? There's a lot of ways to do it. But just make it obvious, because it's so often where, especially if you're trying to get players to be ready with their actions, like the first expectation I said, most of the time they can only do that if they know that their turn is coming up. So avoid the "is it my turn" questions and just make it super obvious. Now, if you're meeting online, hopefully you're using a platform or a software that makes the initiative obvious there. Many of them do, and it's wonderful, where you can just see like, oh, it's your turn, and so on and so forth. So this is a simple one. High and low level play. Just have an initiative tracker, make it obvious. It'll avoid some really obvious questions. And it'll also help you be like, hey, so-and-so, you're on deck. Have your action ready. Now, the fourth combat expectation that you can set is to aim for something other than just destroying the enemy. Have goals outside of just an efficient beatdown. I think that I've talked about this in past episodes a lot because I'm a huge proponent of it. But most players just get so focused on like, oh, I like most of the time combat only ends when the enemies are dead. And so I'm just going to find out how to get them dead as quickly as possible. And it's just that's why so many players go min max, because that's what our gaming culture and the game itself honestly kind of promotes, which is like, oh, it's pretty linear and static combats where it's just like, yeah, you fight until everybody's down but your party. So remember, there's a lot of other ways that combat can end: negotiations, capture, accomplishing a separate goal, grabbing an object, escaping. So why is it always just, beat everyone until they stop moving? It's easy enough to see how this is encouraged, right? Like like when players are like, "Oh, I want to do this creative thing," and then they read the move or the ability or the spell that they have, and it's not quite as literal to what they want to do. It's not a one-to-one, then it's easy to be like, "No, that doesn't happen." And so then they only focus on the numbers and making the numbers go up with damage, that because that's all that was rewarded. So if you reward, and more importantly, model what it's like to have, enemies and NPCs and monsters that know how to work towards different kinds of goals, then players should pick that up as well. Now, be explicit about it too. Be like, hey, players, I want you to remember, and like you can say it after combats, you can say it at the start of sessions, you can say it at the end of sessions, whatever it is. Be like, hey, remember, you don't have to just finish everybody, You can have other goals. And then when you're setting up encounters, have them be goal based, right? Have it be where they're trying to save someone specific, and have it so that enemies are much more willing to run. And then make it so it's like, yeah, if they run, they don't always come back to haunt the players, so that sometimes it's like, no, yeah, you still got the XP. You don't have to feel like it's going to come back to haunt you, although it can, and sometimes that's fun. But regardless, just make sure that they're aware that, like, hey, there's other things. Sometimes they can get in and get out with an object, or they can finally, like by fighting through someone, get to someone else and deliver a message or something, right? There's various ways to do it, but setting that expectation, almost like a combat encounter cultural expectation, where you're like, hey, in this party, we believe that we can be really creative with combat, and that's A-okay. I think that's a wonderful way to go about it. And that's especially true if they're low-leveled. If they're low-leveled, give them leeway, because if you don't give them leeway to be like, oh, they're trying to escape and they don't have any abilities to put out the fire that's blocking their exit, maybe if they start justifying and being like, oh, I have an ability to enchant my blade with frost, would that work? You know what? Maybe throw them a bone sometimes, even if it's ridiculous. Or make it so that the roll isn't just absolutely impossible. Because then if you allow that kind of creativity, then they'll choose more creative abilities later on. If you don't, though, then once they're high-leveled, characters, they'll have just chosen the things that deliver the most damage, and that's kind of it. And that's going to leave it so they're like, oh, wow, yeah, now you just have a bunch of murder hobos, and they don't really have crazy, interesting abilities to allow for these alternate outcomes, and that's partially on you, But anyway, I think that there's a lot of expectations you can set with combat, but setting them early and holding on to them to the point where your party becomes an efficient, party that they can actually get through combats relatively quickly, so that a combat doesn't take up the entire session and a half. It's going to make it so you can get through more stories, finish more campaigns, finish more combats, and also make it so that the players are, not seeing D&D as this weird, like, oh, half the time we're just fooling around and role-playing, and half the time I'm like in combat mode and it's just going to take forever. And also I'm just going to always be thinking about my moves, and, they can figure out a way to do it more efficiently. And so can you. And so with that being the case, let's, leave a challenge for you. First, I want you to introduce at least one of these expectations, or if you had an idea for a different one, do that. But either way, during your next couple sessions, introduce one of these and start setting that expectation regularly. And if that one takes, or if it doesn't, either way, but regardless, try and add in another within the next month or so. And then hopefully, if you keep doing that within, the next quarter, year, you're going to be in a better place where you're like, oh, I feel like our combats are going a lot more smoothly. I also feel like we're full-on professionals at this, and that's wonderful. So make sure that you do that. Please let us know, email us or comment on the episode. Let us know how it went. And until next time, let's roll initiative.